Now, the lockdown regulations have come under fire. Former Minister of Cabinet, that is, Trevor Manuel, says some of the regulations fail the test of rationality.
Yeah, and government has also received a lot of communication challenging the constitutionality and the structure of the National Command Council. There have also been some questions on some of the restrictions and the latest announcement that 19,000 prisoners will be released. Well, to discuss all of these issues, we're joined now by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola, on the line. Minister, thanks very much for your time on the AM report. Plenty of questions, plenty of criticism of how government has fared so far, and particularly recently. What would be your response to South Africans who are saying, you know, it's time to go back to work?
Yeah, obviously, from our perspective, is that the intention was to flatten the curve, to raise awareness, and also to prepare ourselves, including the Department of Health's capability to respond to that. And I think as from the Minister of Health, we have been able to achieve some of those goals. And I think society also has responded well to the regulations. Obviously, there will be those that raise concerns there and then, but overall, we think we are on the right track as a country.
Yeah, and, you know, Minister, among those concerns, of course, is sort of sourced from the 19,000 prisoners that are likely to be released over the next 10 weeks or so. We're already seeing that the number of cases in prisons are increasing as we speak. I mean, do you imagine a scenario where in 10 weeks' time we're going to have to relook at that decision because of how rapidly the situation has changed by then?
No, up to now, the decision that has been taken is the one that is enforced, and it was informed by various factors, including our own experiences internally. As you are aware that the first outbreak happened in East London, and in East London we had to test all the inmates in that facility, which is about 2,137, which has given us the results that we now have. And then we also had to test the officials in that East London area in a number of about 1,069. So then that tells you and gives you in terms of arithmetic that if we have to also do the same in some of the big centers like Sunset, which has got a population of 10,155, Koshimampuru with a population of 8,310 inmates, without including the officials, Portsmouth, with a population of 6,340. You will then realize that it might end up overwhelming our own system. It might also overwhelm the system of the Department of Health with regard to testing. And it was therefore important for us to ease the overcrowding, for us to be prepared as and when the incidences arise, but also for us to be able to respond in terms of the containment measures of isolation and quarantine, and also of the treatment of the inmates. So these numbers that you have just vended that are going to follow a due process of the parole board give us the space to be able to deal with the containment and the recovery.
Minister, what do you say to South Africans who this morning are listening to what you're saying, you know, who have responded to the news of 19,000 inmates being released early with fear, with trepidation? What do you say to them to allay those fears?
Firstly is that this category of inmates were anyway going to get paroled in the next, some of them in the next week, some in the next 6 months, some in the next year. And when you look at these categories, for example, those that were going to get parole in the next 2 years, about 14,393. They are a majority. And those are the people that were anyway going to be released, even if we did not make this decision. But what this decision does is that it brings forward the dates where they can be considered for parole because of the emergency health situation that the country is facing. So those that were supposed to be released in the next two years to 5 years are about it's about 4,530. So you would realize that this is a very small number, and these are people that have undergone our rehabilitation programs. The process will also be very thorough and due, with the help of the SAPS in terms of profiling, in terms of collecting DNA, and also in terms of them having undergone some of the programs. We expect that there will be minimal incidences. It is true in the past, some of the parolees have really tarnished the image of the system, and they have also affected the societal outlook of the parolees. But in the overall, when you look at the behavior of all parolees, they are compliant with the parole conditions. So we have to ensure that that one is too many, which can really frighten society, because sometimes they commit some of the heinous crime. And that is what we are looking at when we speak about the review of the parole process and also of our rehabilitation programs.
Right. Now, we're also learning that the department has moved to appointing a medical advisory panel, as well as an additional 390 or so nurses to try to respond to the increases in the COVID-19 infections. Give us an idea of what the mandate of this advisory panel will be and how different it is to the already established panel of advisors, even at national government. I mean, what different work will they be doing?
Yeah, obviously, you will understand that our environment is unique. It's a unique situation. It's people who are in confinement, who are staying together for almost 24 hours. And across the globe, it has been very difficult for countries to contain this. There is no best practice anywhere in the world in such kind of environment of confinement. So the advisory panel will help us to say, within your environment, for example, as we speak now, we have already got advice from the health experts and that at least we must give the inmates some time to get out of the facilities to receive oxygen. So they will be able to advise us on various measures that we can use that will enable the inmates to get the circulation of oxygen, but also that will enable proper sanitization, ventilation in these facilities, which is a much needed ingredient in the fight against COVID-19. Because the societal situation, for example, in society, you speak about the confinement of people, restriction of movement. In the facilities, it must be opposite, because during the day, we must then be able to allow the inmates to get oxygen, also for their places where they stay of confinement to be sanitized, to be ventilated. So that is the unique kind of environment that we find ourselves in.
Minister, perhaps just as we start to wrap up our interview with you, as someone who sits on the National Command Council, you know, the NCC is coming for a lot of criticism just around the regulations that govern the levels of the lockdown. Some people calling it petty, you know, that I can buy a pair of shoes, but I can't buy a pair of flip-flops. You know, we can't criticize government for the steps that have been taken so far so that we ensure our hospitals are ready. But isn't it time now for us to get back to work?
Yeah, obviously, if you look at those kind of measures, they came in at the early stages of the regulations. And we had to consider various factors. If for example, a shop that was open to provide essential service was also allowed to sell any other product that could be sold in that particular shop, it meant that we were also supposed to allow any other shop that does not sell the essential service. For example, if you go to any retailer where you could buy whatever that is essential, as you can see the challenges that have been there, the government was going to find it difficult to explain why another shop which only sells that product that is not essential could also not open. And that then opens up for competitive issues and various socio-economic, including issues of inequality. For example, the issues were raised that why, if you allow this kind of a retailer to sell fruit, and why cannot you allow even a person in the informal sector to do the same? Those kind of things will always arise. So government has to look at a comprehensive picture and then make a determination. But obviously, with the information and data that always comes, which is new, this is a new, it's a novel virus for everyone. As data comes and information are new is presented to the National Command Council, we have seen various changes of regulations, we have seen various changes of directions, and we always adapt to those new changes. And I think we will continue to work like that. With all new information coming, with where we are today, assessment continues, and from time to time we announce what has come in and what has changed.
All right, let's leave it there, at least for now. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Ronald Lamola, of course, is the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services Centres, joining us there on our telephone line.